Well, on the show now, time to look at issues around environmental regulation. We'll talk a bit of water policy too with farmers. Of course, Erica van Reenan is an agricultural environmental consultant with Ag First. Welcome to the show, Erica. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you here. Look, I'm going to give you a big build-up because, of course, you've got a very, very strong background. You previously worked as a policy analyst for the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry in this year, Bachelor of Science with a focus on sustainable agriculture, then a master's degree in agricultural science honours with a thesis on like this, merino wool production in the South Island high country, and a host of awards, all sorts of awards here. The list is too long to go through, Erica, but great to have you on the show. First of all, just in a pretty general sort of sense, in terms of environmental regulation, what are the good things happening on the farms?
There's a lot of challenges across the country in terms of regulations, as you guys have been covering. Every region's tackling it in a different way, which is means it's pretty tough for farmers to get their head around it. The great thing is that most farmers are very passionate about looking after their land and doing their best for it. And I've never met a farmer that didn't want to hand their land on in a better state. And so every farmer that I deal with has been working quite hard at managing their environmental issues, understanding what they may need to do for regulation. But the great thing is that they're actually looking to do not just the bottom lines, but more than that, and have that gold standard and do the best they possibly can for their land. Ultimately, it's the land that produces their food. Somewhere
along the line, that message gets lost, doesn't it? And I'm going to say this quite clearly, in that sort of urban-rural divide, there would be there's a school of thinking that farmers don't think like that they don't care about their land, that there's a majority who wouldn't give a hoot about how they passed it on, but that's not right.
I've worked all over the country for several years on this subject, and I just haven't come across anyone that thinks like that. What you've got to remember is that farmers follow the incentives, and so often their behaviour is driven by previous regulation. So if you think about subsidies in the 70s, farmers were subsidised to clear land and put fertiliser on and have as many stock as possible. That was an incentive from the government to do that. And so farmers will operate within the bounds of the rules and the environment that they're given and where the industry focuses on. So mostly they're just trying to do the best they can. And as they adapt and understand new issues and have new knowledge, they will adapt and evolve to that, and they are doing that.
You mentioned the 70s, the skinny sheep scheme, etc., etc. Then came Mr. Longy, and we're seeing it now with the change or potential changing of the goalposts. The early 80s, I was a young stock agent up in Marlborough. All of a sudden it's changed, didn't it? Interest rates went from about 5 or 6, 7% up to 20-odd%. Do you believe the goalposts are being moved too rapidly for our farmers?
Look, our farmers are pretty good at adapting. We see that all the time. They have to adapt to climate, to market drivers, and they do that on a regular basis. I think there's definitely policy needs to also consider how farmers are going to make that change and what's required, and the magnitude in some instances is massive. We're talking about a cultural shift here in many parts of the country, and that takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. It's like all of us. We weren't busy recycling like 20 years ago like we are now in the cities. Those sorts of behaviours take time to evolve, and so we need to actually support our farmers so that they have the time to meet the needs of the consumer and of the urban public.
I never actually got a chance to ask you that a couple of years ago when you did that really awesome scholarship with Woolworths over in Australia. You're not only in terms of the on-farm consulting extension side, but you have a passion in regards to connecting that environmental story to our produce. Where's your head at in terms of what we can be doing better to accreditate our gold standard that we put on ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a lot of the things that we've been asked to do as farmers, particularly around farm environment plans, which are a really great tool that farmers can use to assess their risks on farm and actually outline what they are doing, what they have done, and what they plan to do. It's a great documentation that farmers are doing. In fact, I had 14 Manawatu and Wairarapa farmers doing a workshop yesterday and completing their environment plan. Those plans are something that can be used for regulation, they can be used on farm, but what they can also be used for is showing the markets that this is all the great stuff we're doing that's enhancing our ecosystems, and that might change the way we actually tell our story and demonstrate what we're doing, because I think that's been the challenge, is we haven't actually been able to demonstrate what we're doing on farm to look after our environment because it's so intrinsic to our culture.
Environmentally, farmers are doing their best now. Now with their nutrient budgeting, etc., they'll do better. What's your thought and opinion on our neighbours, for some of us, around these waterways? I'm the Waimak River. Mm-hmm. Each side is lined, in most places, with gorse and broom.
Yeah.
That's an environmental hazard by itself. Do you think the regional councils, those that are putting these other regulations in place for us, are doing their bit?
Yeah, I think it's we can always do better all of the time. That goes for all of us. That goes for councils, farmers, urbanites, everyone. And I've been involved with a great project up in Gisborne with Gisborne District Council and focused on the Riri rock slide and the waterfall. And the farmers, working with the farmers there to clean up the river, basically. And now that river has had some challenges with bacteria, but there's also a lot of the public use that river. And so the farmers put pressure on the council to increase the clean-up of rubbish, for example, so they weren't doing it frequent enough. And the council responded to that because the farmers were doing their bit. Council recognised they needed to do their thing as well. So it's a really good example of that working, where council is working really closely with the community and the farmers to get the desired outcome without putting timeline pressures on it, allowing for it to happen. And I think every council can follow that model. All it takes is a good relationship between the community and the councils, and ultimately the council's part of our community too. So absolutely, they need to do better, just like the rest of us.
Radio Live Rural Exchange.